I'm Lisa Anderson, host of Supply Chain Chats and president of LMA Consulting Group, and I'm thrilled to be here today with David from Ogilvie in Brisbane, Australia, and we're going to talk about ERP and the supply chain. We are both experts in both of those topics, so I'm thrilled to be here today, David, with you. Welcome, and maybe get us started with what do you see going on in the ERP world? So I know you focus quite a bit on ERP selections and also upgrades.
Thank you, Lisa, and it's great to be with you, and thanks for having me. The ERP space, well, it's probably not the sexiest topic under the sun, but as you and I both know, it's quite an exciting place to work. I guess if we're talking about big shifts at the moment, clearly there are probably two in my mind that come to mind very quickly. And the first one is obviously AI, and we'll get to AI in a minute because it is probably the big elephant in the room. But the other one that's having a big impact on the industry, I think, is the place of VCs. So the venture capitalists have been buying up different ERP vendors for some time. CISPRO has, for example, what's his name, Duff from CISPRO has sold to a VC company. They've invested a significant amount of capital in doing some product improvements. And they're not the only ones. So that's probably where I see the biggest movement in the space that the average punter probably wouldn't get to see.
You know what? You bring up a really good point, actually. What I've seen over the last 20 years, and I know that we've both been in this space for quite a while, is that there's been a consolidation largely of ERP suppliers. So if you're not one of the big guys like Oracle, SAP, Microsoft, Sage, owned by one of those folks, it's getting harder and harder to compete. So what you're seeing is if you're not one of the big guys, you're getting bought by a VC. Is that a way to say this?
Yes, correct. Yes, and there's a group called Constellation Software. I'm not sure whether you're across. Yep. Yes, and they've got a massive portfolio of different applications, and that only a small number of Constellations applications are actually marketed and sold out here in Australia. I think they've got a bigger presence in EMEA and the US, obviously. But if you are somebody who started an application, and like Jan Barn, for example, right? He sold Barn many moons ago. Well, he's returned. He's seen an opportunity in the market, and he's out selling his own product yet again. And he's probably hopeful that he might get bought up by one of the VCs again as a money-making exercise. And and good luck to him if he does do that. But
actually, Barn is a blast from the past. What's his software now?
So he's doing a lot with agents, AI agents, and his offering is more like a jigsaw of different agents doing different things for the application, rather than it being a big application.
Well, and actually, I think that brings us to the next topic anyway, because I think in addition to the companies buying up, pretty much it's the big guys. Because if you don't have money to invest in ERP, you're not going to be around for that long. And so I think that's probably why you're Constellation Brands is buying up others so that, they have some volume and they can go from there. I'm thinking that not all of our audience understands, but ERP is the foundational elements, the transaction systems. You're going to be doing shipping, receiving, invoicing, and it definitely has, from a planning standpoint, which I know, from the supply chain point of view is important, is MPS, master production scheduling, MRP, material requirements planning, and those types of capacity, resource planning, and those types of elements. But ERP systems sometimes, they buy up some of these other systems, like a forecasting system or an advanced planning system. Generally speaking, though, they tend to be add-ons, although they might own them. Is that maybe you could explain further?
Yep, they do that. They buy these little niche opportunities, and that's sort of the software, the ERP space in general. I guess the Microsoft ecosystem is probably the best example of how this operates. they've obviously never written any of the ERP systems that they market and sell. They've bought them from somewhere else. So they've been somebody else's product. And each of those products have had their own little holes in them. So let's take a classic example, AX, when it was back in AX, early in its career, in its lifestyle, it had a big warehousing problem. It didn't handle warehousing very well. So one of the partners goes and builds the software built on the platform, and has the code approved by Microsoft, so to speak. Anyway, they plug that hole and then they sell that software to Microsoft. So the advanced warehouse management and transportation management piece in what you see in finance and operations today started out as a product from somewhere else. Now that's happening in all of the ecosystems, not just the Microsoft ecosystem. Right. There are people plugging these holes left, right, and centre. Epicor, for example, they bought a forecasting application to try and plug a hole that they had in that space. So
and they also bought a configurator software recently too.
They did, Max, correct.
Yeah, exactly, which was one of the stronger ones. So they're trying to shore up that base. So you're right. I mean, I think it's actually kind of interesting. I wasn't thinking about this when we first started our chat here, but I think you're getting to the point where if you're an ERP supplier, no one's going to try to compete with you on transactions. I think really where AI fits, generally, and a lot of these peripheral softwares, like some of the smaller mid-tier systems, you may have to bring on some of these other softwares to go with it, which is not a problem in today's world. I mean, they're really easily integratable, or they work well together. With that said, though, the big guys are have their own, or they're buying their own. Doesn't mean you couldn't use another software. But I think it's making it like confusing to our clients. And then they're also thinking like, I don't want to pay all this money. So can I just use an AI tool and do some of these tasks? Are you seeing that question?
Yes, I'm seeing the question. I'm not seeing the answer yet. Where I'm seeing AI being used, excuse me, is with the a lot of the implementation vendors are using agents to help them in their implementation pieces, so the configuration piece. So we're seeing a lot of vendors try to automate that as much as possible, take away the costly consultant time on a project. Now, I have mixed feelings about how successful that's going to be. Any AI, I think there needs to be strong human involvement at the moment. They're far from perfect and all of those sorts of things. So there needs to be strong human involvement in the first instance. And I don't believe any agent has the capacity to understand the unique things about a business yet. Right. And that's where the human intelligence within each of the consultants. So which of these configuration settings do I have a choice of? Sure, you can automate the fact that the user's going to pick one and you don't need a consultant there, but are they making the right choice for that business? And I still think that's one of the holes.
I completely agree. One of the largest errors that we see clients make, and then they have to figure out how they're going to resolve it, is choosing wrong setups in the first place. Now, it might sound good when they're choosing these setups. They're like, oh, of course I want to do, I don't know, like I had a client recently that was going to, in a planning scenario, was going to say, well, if it doesn't meet scenario A, I want to set it up to do scenario B automatically, which sounds really good. So of course you're going to agree to it until you realize that it's going to mess up, the entire planning process, because the system's not designed to do that way. So, that's a client where they set it up like somewhat differently, but they also have, if you set up certain things like, I don't know, like the way you track inventory, and you set it up from the beginning not incorrectly, but not to best design for your business, then you have to go through hassles to get it going. Is that what you find as well?
Yes, a very simple example of that is the inventory methods that you're going to be used for recording. Are you using LIFO or FIFO? Now, very simple. They all make kind of sense depending on the circumstances that you're in. If you're in a, if you're in a food and beverage organisation, and you need to make sure you got the longest life cycle on your product when you release it, then LIFO might be the option. But if you've got somebody who doesn't understand that, making the choices, and it's an automated by an agent, well, then they're going to be making the wrong decision. And, while I applaud trying to get the cost of the implementation of ERP down, because it can be very, very expensive, as you and I both know, and there's no guarantee from any of the vendors that the consultants that they actually put on your project actually know what they're doing. Most of these organisations, let's be frank, are there to make sure that the people the seats that they've got filled are actually being billed, and that's their driver, not the quality of the advice that they're giving. So that whole bit about making that cheaper and easier, I understand is a desirable goal, just not sure we're getting there yet.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do agree. I mean, I think what's in the example you brought up about automating the settings, it's actually a really good example of you can use AI, and you can eliminate some low-skilled resources or the need for somebody to hit keys, right? Because it can do those kinds of things and automate it. But I think it actually increases the need for people who understand business and systems and can make good decisions and or find issues and figure out what to do about it. Is that your thinking as well?
I agree entirely, yes. And this is where in my Sure Select process methodology that we use to select these systems, that's part of the components, is making sure that we understand where the vendors' consultants have got their experience from. So if this consultant A is going to be on our project, well, then we need to understand where have they got their experience from. Are they just, and with all due respects to IT students, are they an IT student that's come out and just got a job with a software vendor and has been, is going to apply the configuration settings that they used on their last project on your project? Or are they somebody who's actually been a production planner and understands the nuances around that, and they've now working for a software vendor? There's a completely different result there, just because. Very much. Yeah, so that's part of our
very much true. I completely agree.
A lot of emphasis on that.
Yeah, actually, I agree as well. There are some nuances between softwares, and maybe we'll talk about it, but what I've seen, I guess, since I brought that up, is, there's some softwares that are slightly better geared to make to order, engineer to order, configure to order, whereas other ones are better geared to process type manufacturing. Yes. Aside from that, though, there's, which softwares are keeping up really, because do they have the same capabilities when it comes to, I don't know if I want to call it AI, but more of the advanced features in an ERP system, which sometimes can contain AI pieces to it. But do you find the same, or do you see any other categories that I've missed? But generally speaking, there's also mid-tier, how much power do you really need? You don't need to by all means, you should not get something that's too big for you, because it'll require a ton of resources to handle, and it also you may never go live because you can't figure it out.
To your point, there's a local company in my town here in Brisbane that is a major distributor of a particular product. I won't name them. But their software vendor had made the decision to become an SAP distributor, and previous to that they had been a Sage distributor. Now all of a sudden,
very different.
All right, very different. And all of a sudden, S4HANA is ideal for your business. Now this lady has taken the advice, because they were a long-term client of this software vendor, and the relationship was very good. She trusted them, and they put S4HANA into this small business. And when I, chased up and caught up with her not long after the implementation, she said, "David, this system is killing my business. I've had to put on 4 more people."
Yeah, it's understandable.
So to your point, the vendors need to be held accountable for some of that, in my opinion, which is why you and I exist, right? Because we give them the great advice, and the vendors don't always like what we say, but at least in my case, it's the brutal truth.
It is the case in my case too. I mean, it's actually, to your point, it is actually a tough field, because software suppliers are some of the best salespeople out there, and that there's nothing wrong with that, because of course they have to survive. On the other hand, it makes it very difficult, because you can make a system seem like it's providing a lot more of what you need it to do than it really does, unless you really know how to look in the nooks and crannies. Would you agree with that?
That gets back to your other point about the products, the development that's going on in those products. That's where a lot of those VCs that I mentioned before are putting that investment, is in many of them, they're shifting them to a proper cloud platform. So, in one case, the software vendor was really just doing their cloud version hosted in a data center somewhere.
Yeah.
And it wasn't rewritten and generally a cloud application. It was on a browser, so therefore it must be on the cloud.
Right.
So there's that sort of thing going on, and there are still a number of them where, when you lift the hood, they're an absolute spaghetti mess.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it?
They're
interesting.
Together with all sorts of things, and at the front end, they look great, they demonstrate well. The salespeople can talk very, very strongly about the capabilities and everything, but underneath, if you want to start doing some smarter things with AI and with integration pieces.
I know what you mean. Nevertheless, if you want to expand the capabilities, it's not quite as easy as it seems.
Correct.
In essence. Well, and speaking of which, these days, it may not all be part of your ERP system, but what I'm seeing in this arena is a lot of folks are taking their ERP, optimizing the use of the ERP, and then adding on some additional features like a Power BI or one of the other softwares. But that one's it's pretty much dominating in the field of business analytics and that type of thing, or like a e-commerce system that you might put on the front end, or a CPQ.
That's one of the areas that I do see a lot more movement in, and that is manufacturers having some sort of retail arm, or when I say a B2C arm, as opposed to retail. And so that doing the commerce piece, ERP systems don't do that well.
They don't.
No.
I mean, they're not meant to do that well. And for our audience, I think that's fine. Like the e-commerce pieces that you would choose, which of course is a whole nother selection process, but it will go well with any of the modern ERP systems anyway.
Correct. Yes, because I've got a client in Melbourne who was doing that, and they ended up with one of the typical not Spotify, Shopify. Yeah, they end up with Shopify. I
said that too the other day. But no, it's absolutely true. We did a selection for that type of a company, as well as CRM is another one where they may include, most systems will probably include something, but it might be just very basic and it probably doesn't meet your needs. Is that pretty much what you see as well?
100%. Like Epicor is a really good example of that. Right? They got a very fundamental CRM system. And if that's all you need, well, then it's adequate, because it's the transactions and some tracking capabilities. But if you want to get really smart about how you manage your sales team, well, then you do need something else.
Right, absolutely. Salesforce dominates, although Microsoft has an advanced one too that's out there.
They do, but just be careful. The word of warning for some people out there, don't forget, because it's branded Microsoft Dynamics doesn't mean it's the same product, because it's not. And the integration and the out of the box integrations that they might talk about may not exist.
It's true. Again, similar to the Power BI, it's kind of interesting, but Salesforce pretty much dominates with the clients that we've been working with. I mean, there's others, but it's. Well,
that's a very expensive.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, I agree. There are other options. What about you on your end? Do you see a lot of Salesforce, or do you see some other software?
Yes, I do. I see a lot of Salesforce. I'm going to be blunt here. I find some of those bigger companies like that extraordinarily arrogant in the way that they deal with clients. I'm in
It's
a
true in the software field, David, I have to say. I mean, there've been some
Oracle's the same,
selection
right?
projects. There's been some selection projects I've been on where I've been like completely, well, I'll just say disgusted, really. But that doesn't necessarily, mean that it's not like the right choice for the client. Then we go with it. But it's just like surprising.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not talking about any particular one. I'm just saying in general.
Yeah, yes. Like you, I guide and facilitate the client to make their decision, but they need to be a well informed, fully informed decision. And so that's the sort of thing you've got to bring to the table so that they know what they're stepping into. Because in 3 years' time, when the negotiations come around for your licensing uplifts, you need to know what sort of beast you're talking to.
It's true, actually. And that reminds me that be cautious of that as well. One of my chats was related to a attorney that deals in software agreements. So listen to that because there's a lot of things to think about. With that said, though, David, the other thing that comes up a lot in our world, because we build in supply chain, is like advanced planning systems. Well, everybody calls it different things, but could be demand planning, replenishment, VMI, like lots of names for these things, in advanced planning. Some of the systems, again, have bought a system that they work with, but others, there's some very expensive systems out there that do this. And I'm having more and more clients ask about, can we just use some AI tools with alerts? Like, we've bought Claude, the business version, and they're thinking about using it. What I'm finding is like for an analysis, perhaps, but not for like a ongoing, like something that's going to handle the same kind of a thing as an advanced planning system. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have an expensive one either. So that's like the trick in software selection, right? What do you find?
So I find that us as human beings have a great propensity of not necessarily maximizing the use of the applications we've got.
That's true.
While there might be a strong demand, a lot of talk about, we need a more advanced planning system, often when I dig into those sorts of clients asking those questions, I find that they're not even doing the basics of S&OP.
It's totally true, actually. I have to say, I'm working with a client right now with exactly that. They're talking about Claude, but we're actually just looking at rolling out MPS MRP, which sounds quite basic, but it's gonna work wonders and help them improve their service and inventory and profitability substantially, right?
These systems have got a process, and you've got to work the process. And if you're not going to be disciplined about your process and the data integrity that you're going to be feeding these systems, well, then it's the old rubbish in, rubbish out argument, right? And so why spend all this money on an advanced planning system when you're going to be throwing rubbish at it anyway? Doesn't make a lot of sense. But to your point about AI, replacing it with AI, the big thing that's coming, I think, is this. All of these vendors, and that's AWS, Oracle, Microsoft, all of them are applying billions of dollars
they are.
These data centers. Those investors are going to want a good return sometime very soon. And let's be honest, like when over 90% of the use of AI is done through an individual account, so that not a lot of them are on corporate plans. So most of them are using somebody's individual account. And so the industry is going to have a challenge moving people from their own accounts to a corporate account. And then those corporate accounts are going to be so damn expensive, I think, somewhere down the track, soon, that's going to be a handbrake on AI use. Because are they actually getting the value for the cost that it's going to be? Because some of these costs for big companies, so if you've got 1,000 employees, for example, right, they're talking the costs of AI being in the $200,000 to $300,000 to $400,000 a year bracket. Well, that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money, exactly. So, I mean, you may end up, I agree with you really, because like the thing is that it depends. Like AI can mean a lot of things. It could just mean like, I want to use forecasting. That's a different, that's normal. That's been used for quite a while. But if you're talking about using like a corporate account of like Claude or, one of the other ones, ChatGPT, but, depends on what you're trying to do. Nevertheless, to your point, it can add up, and it depends somewhat on energy usage, which is a whole nother matter. I mean, really, even in individual accounts, it's kind of interesting. I've been utilizing AI a lot recently because I've been, from a writing point of view for articles, but to ask it some questions. I've been doing some website upgrades and, asking it questions. And the funny thing is that like it gets tired eventually, which I think means it runs out of energy and it just stops like reading things. But it doesn't tell you that. So anyway, it's kind of, I wouldn't be surprised. Like you said, it'll be very expensive, a very expensive endeavor. So I think it's probably like, it's definitely got a good use. It's just a matter of like the right tool for the right situation. Is not going to be like, we'll just use AI and solve this problem and avoid this expensive purchase. Well, the expensive purchase of an APS system might be less expensive than AI and do more. But on the other hand, for a different client, the AI bot might be the exact thing that they need. So I think it really just means that we're going to have to be smarter about what we're choosing. Do you agree with that? Or
yes, I do. And the other comment I'd make there is I noticed a LinkedIn post from one of the a well-respected Microsoft guy a couple of days ago, and he was saying he can't wait for the day that the AI gets very expensive because it's going to get rid of what he called all the AI slop.
Probably so, really. I actually, it's probably very true because like I have every client is using AI now, but as to what degree, and sometimes it's a little bit worrisome because they're using an individual account, which is like really concerning because that means the data could be it will be used in developing the AI, algorithm. So I think there's a lot of education that has to happen here as well.
I agree. And the comment I made to him was, my concern is with all of this AI, using his term, slop, it needs to be stitched together. So we've got to be very careful that we're not working on a jigsaw puzzle and we're using pieces from 10 different boxes.
Yeah, that's true. Because actually, it just reminds me of another webinar that I did with a software provider that had an AI system that would is good for purchasing and orders. Because of course, that's somewhat more automatable if you have just just enter this order and have AI do it. Sure. But, it would do more it would call out to people and I could see the use for sure, depending upon the situation. And you would, have a lot of it going through a check or whatever. And it could be a really good thing. However, I also can see that eventually you'll be the ERP softwares will of course build this in. You're going to have all these people with hodgepodges of information. So to your point, it could be very valuable and it could end up in a disaster. So I think it might just mean that they need us more than ever to try to make sense of all of this.
I can only hope so.
Very true. Well, David, it's time is flown by here. Do you have any last thoughts about this whole? I mean, it's a rather large topic between ERP and all of the related softwares, but do you have any final thoughts?
Well, and I'm going to do a little bit of a sales pitch, even though we gave the salespeople a little bit of a third earlier on. If you are looking to do these sorts of things, it's really important to get good advice, good, sound, trustful advice. And I think certainly in this country, the bigger consulting firms have got themselves in a very big mess in this country. And so, if you're looking for people who are experienced and understand what conflict of interest and those sorts of things mean, well then, the time has come to look at more niche organisations like ours. because, I just don't think they're serving their clients well.
I do agree with you. I think that what folks should be thinking about is, who do you have that has and it doesn't have to be David or I, of course, we're great choices, but look for somebody with the process experience, the process expertise, and ERP and systems expertise. And really, you need, some level of integration understanding, because no matter what you do, you're probably going to at least put on something like a Power BI or something. You want to bring all these pieces together in a way that, what's the point of all of this if it doesn't deliver a business result? So I think that's a really good point, David. Well, thank you for joining us today on Supply Chain Chats, and we look forward to the next one.
Look forward to it. Thanks for having me, Lisa. It's good to see you.
Thank you. You too.